Hi all, and welcome back to another edition of the Millennial Cynic with me, Sarah. I hope you're keeping well. Today I want to take a look at a recent attempt at moving towards a cashless society here in Ireland, and the government fallout that followed. I am, of course, talking about AIB, a bank that was bailed out by the Irish taxpayer in the wake of the financial crash, a bank that the government still holds a majority share in, and today, a bank that decided to try to change 70 of its 170 branches to cashless. So let's recap the story first real quick before I dive into analysing it all. On July 19th of this year, instead of going on holiday, which they probably should have done instead, AIB announced that they would be moving 70 of their branches to a cashless setup. The branches in question would instead be used for opening new bank accounts, applying for loans and mortgages, and for financial planning. They said that the branches that were changing were near on-post branches, which will be able to handle the cash side of things. They cited a declining demand for cash services, coupled with the cost involved in maintaining cash services as the driving factors. Any ATMs at said branches would also be removed, and all cash or cheque transactions would be directed to their local on-post branch or nearest AIB branch that wouldn't be changing. So there's a lot to unpack here. Firstly, while on the surface simply directing people to their local post office might seem like a good thing in that it keeps on-post useful and integral to the local community, as it should be, the services on offer were curtailed versions of what would be available at a full AIB branch. For example, business customers could only lodge €5,000 a week in an on-post branch, unless you, and I'm quoting from the AIB website here, arrange it in advance through your local AIB branch, in which case you can then lodge up to 50,000. All this with withdrawal limits of €1,500 a day for both personal and business customers. Doesn't exactly sound seamless, does it? The second factor when we talk about on-post taking over these services is that many areas don't even have a local branch anymore. So what are people in those towns supposed to do? But the biggest problem I have with on-post being delegated this task by AIB is that if you are an AIB customer, you are paying them fees for banking services. Banking services which are now being curtailed and moved. AIB should be providing these services to their customers themselves. Bank charges are fairly ridiculous here in Ireland, but imagine paying a service charge when you're forced to use on-post instead of a branch of the bank that you actually use and pay for. Most people in this situation would be better served to simply switch their banking to on-post full stop and cutting AIB out altogether. The next problem with all of this is their reasoning behind the move. They claim that customer habits have moved towards cashless and that it was getting too expensive to work with cash. So, firstly, the pandemic had a hand in people moving towards cashless as we were encouraged to do so to stop the spread of the virus. Although, in hindsight, surely good and proper hand hygiene is all that's needed when handling cash, just like with everything else. Anyway, in any case, that move to contactless was a temporary one. I know I, for one, have returned to using cash again whenever I can, and I don't think I'm alone in that. But the pandemic was not the only reason. Many banks have forced this change in habits. They have cut back on tellers in the branches. They have aggressively encouraged online banking. This is not a chicken and egg scenario. This is very much cause and effect. But the second part of the reasoning behind this change is where the truth lies. It's becoming too costly for them to deal in cash. What this really means is that it's cheaper to deal in online only. Less overheads related to cash handling like security and upkeep of ATMs. So it's more a case that they'd rather cut out these overheads so as to make more profits. The reaction to this announcement was not what AIB were expecting. Palpable anger was felt from all corners. In some areas, the move would mean a customer having to travel 70 kilometres to their nearest branch. GAA club Ballinamore Sean O'Heslins released a strong statement, pointing out the hypocrisy of a bank that prides itself on supporting local communities through their GAA sponsorship, cutting vital services to those same local communities in the name of profits. and called on the GAA to end their partnership with AIB unless this decision was reversed. The reaction from government was pitiful, in my opinion. We had Minister for Finance Paschal Donoghue saying he was blindsided by the announcement. We had Micheál Martin urging AIB to reflect and reconsider. All a show, in my opinion. All a facade. You see, this is where my anger has settled. AIB has indeed reflected and reconsidered and decided to row back on the decision due to overwhelming public backlash. People power in action. However, the government's role in all of this is something that warrants a closer look. You see, the very next morning after AIB reflected and reconsidered, the truth finally came out for all to see. And it is what many, including myself, had been saying before the U-turn. Government knew. Government knew the full details 4 days prior to the announcement and knew weeks in advance of the general idea behind the move without the specifics. And yet we have the show of shock, the show of anger, the show of actually caring, the theatrics in the aftermath of backpatting among government ranks, and the blocking of those who called them out on it. Disgusting drivel from liars and cowards. In my opinion, of course. But if you thought it stopped there, you'd be wrong. Sunday, 24th of July, and we then get reports that Paschal actually didn't know anything. That his officials did, but for some strange reason, which I'm sure is just a case that they haven't come up with it yet, they didn't tell poor Paschal. He only found out in the hours before the announcement. Poor Paschal. Poor, incompetent Paschal. That's the narrative, folks. Because they've decided that this narrative is better than the truth. The truth which is plain as day. The truth which I will maintain is the truth. A truth that anyone can see. Of course he bloody well knew. He knew well in advance. But let's pretend for a moment that the narrative they are spinning is the truth. That Paschal truly didn't know about it. Let's swallow the nonsense for a second and indulge this lie. So Paschal didn't know. I don't think this absolves him the way he and the rest hope it does. In fact, this is just as bad as the barefaced lies we are being told. This amounts to gross incompetence by both himself and his officials. The major shareholder was unaware of sweeping changes. The major shareholder asleep at the wheel. Or worse again, his officials deliberately didn't tell him to protect him, to provide a level of deniability in case it blew up in their faces. In any other walk of life, an error of this magnitude would see heads roll and jobs lost. Oh, but not here. Not in Dáil Éireann. Oh God, no. They simply brazen it out, pawning off incompetence as mere oversight. Nothing to see here, folks. Move on. But we see it. We see it clear as day, the truth and the lies. The utter disdain our government has for us mere mortals, us mere electorate. They think so little of us that they actually believe that we will believe their lies and spin. But we see you. There is also the small matter of the timing of this announcement. It had been in the works for a while, so why now? Well, I've been fairly cynical up until this point, so no point stopping now, eh? I mean, it is who I am after all. So let's get a little bit more cynical. Why now? Well, because the Dáil is on their summer holidays. Which means no pesky leaders' questions, no opposition badgering, no tough questions. Nice, easy questions from the media, that's all. And any journalists who ask the tough questions like, oh, I don't know, how were you blindsided when you're the majority shareholder? Well, they're easier to ignore than, say, a Mary Lou, a Murphy, a Batchick, a Shortall, a Healy-Rae, and so on and so forth. because you know well, each and every politician with speaking time in the Dáil would be sure to ask many, many tough questions about this issue. They would, in short, make political hay from this little stunt. And our glorious leaders knew this. Hence, the convenient timing. Makes sense to me, anyway. But there is some element of truth in the reports. AIB and the Department of Finance officials were taken aback by the backlash. So they were blindsided after all. But not by the announcement. No. They were blindsided by the fury of the Irish people. They were blindsided by the backlash. They were blindsided by the will of the people to keep their cash. That's what they were blindsided by. You see, there has been this march, this slow, steady march towards a cashless society. And this little exercise, in my opinion of course, was nothing more than a kite-flying exercise to gauge the public perception of a cashless society. Well, I think it's fair to say they got their answer. An answer they certainly were not expecting. I, like many others, do not want a cashless society. I do not want to be at the whims of technology for my finances. I do not want to be a power outage or network outage away from having no access to my own funds. I want to be able to spend my money without a shadowy big brother-like figure watching. I want to be able to put a few bob in a birthday card. Cashless is not the way to go. It means no change for the charity bucket, no car boot sales, no more pocket money for your kids or visits from the tooth fairy. No, you'd be at the whims of financial institutions and technology. Imagine having every single expense scrutinised when applying for a loan or a mortgage. Imagine banks being able to charge whatever they want for their services, knowing that they have full control over your finances. Imagine a network or power outage or even a cyber attack, and your money is now inaccessible or worse, gone. This was nothing more than a conspiracy theory a mere few years ago, and yet here we are. The kite flying, the testing the waters. Well, the Irish people have said no. Forcefully and with no doubt, we said no. While I'm sure more kites will be flown and the benefits of cashless will slowly but surely be trotted out by government and media alike over the coming years, for now, we've made ourselves loud and clear. We want our cash. Now, before I sign off for the day, there may well be more admissions and revelations in the coming days about just how much, or little, the government and their advisors knew about all of this. As of recording this on the 25th of July, this is the most up-to-date news on the matter. But one thing is for certain, the government have shown themselves up. If this debacle doesn't illuminate just how little they think of the ordinary Irish people, then I don't know what will. The utter disdain they have shown for truth, transparency, and in turn the Irish people themselves is truly a sight to behold. We still want an election, by the way. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you've enjoyed my take on this stunt and the fiasco that followed. If you have, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more from me. I'm also on Twitter if you'd like to follow my hot takes in real time. Hope to see you again soon. Slán go fóill.